Welcome back to Let Us In podcast. This episode's dropping in cozy season. So, what better time to talk about book to film adaptations? And in this episode specifically, we're going to talk about Stephen King.
I'm Crystal, aka Creepin, it's spooky.
Hi, I'm Emma, aka Emma of the Impact.
And I'm Justine, aka JustineUFF. And today we have a special guest, Horror Chronicles. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Sydney, aka Horror Chronicles.
Salem's Lot's one of those movies that every time I bring it up, people are like, I haven't seen that. I'm always like surprised because it was such a formative film for me when I was younger.
It's a Gen X, and I don't mean that as a bad thing. It's just that it aired on TV at a very specific time where that specific generation, like most of Gen X, will say they've seen it because it was so seminal. Especially if
That's saying, but I'm not Gen X, all right? We're not Gen X.
No,
maybe those are Gen X.
We're millennials.
Yeah,
I feel like that movie is one, say, like in an event horizon, where like I feel like if you watched it young, it traumatized you, but if you watched it later in life, like it definitely was not as effective. Like because I watched Salem's Lot like later, like in my adult life, probably like 3-4 years ago. I watched it for the first time, and I was like, okay, like again, it was a mini series, so there's parts like the original It where like it definitely drags at points, and you're like, okay, but like kid in the window scene is enough to traumatize anybody.
I was so
happy
it was included in the new 101 scariest moments in film. That's included in that. I was so excited. I was like, yes, because this movie freaked me out. This series did when I was little. I say movie because my aunt recorded that, and that's how I watched it. I watched it as like a movie.
Yeah. Memories.
Literally, my
Kids wouldn't understand.
I think I've said this on the podcast before, but she had over thousands of VHS films.
Yeah.
And she had 2 TVs so she could record what was on TV, because that's what it took back then, was like 2 VCRs or 2 TVs playing at the same time so that you could record it live.
Or you could record, watch it and record. You had to have 2,
but we would get like Blockbuster ones, and you'd play it over here and record it over here, and that's how we got a lot of
Oh my god. Never forget.
And she would reproduce them for friends too.
Ooh, scandalous.
Good for her.
But that's why I am in love with film. So a lot of these miniseries I watched because she recorded them. So.
Hey, it's great.
Including Storm of the Century, actually. That's another one I watched as a movie. I didn't know for a long time that was a series that happened on TV. I thought it was a movie that had ads.
Yeah.
Movies had ads back then. Everything had ads.
That's true.
So it makes sense.
Yeah. So go ahead and talk about Pet Sematary, though.
Pet Sematary is a book that Stephen King never wanted published, ever.
Yep.
He thought it was
why?
Because it's far too dark.
Scary.
So dark. It also reflected a lot of his own feelings he was having at a certain time in his life that didn't reflect who he was as a person. It was basically a legal battle with a publishing house and everything that kind of led to he had to have a certain amount of output, and it was published. The darkness in the book that I think I'm assuming, I don't know for sure, that he's talking about that doesn't translate into the movie, which I love that movie so much.
Yeah.
And Rachel scared the shit out of me. Not Rachel, a sister, Zelda. Zelda scared the shit out of me. That's one of my earliest.
And that still holds up. That's still terrifying. Like even looking at it now, it's not cheesy.
Like a scene where it's like oddly close to the camera all of a sudden.
Oh my god, traumatizing.
And he really talks about the main character, the father. He's talking about how he only really loves and cares about his son, Gabe, and like Gabe is like the light of his life, and he has these fantasies of just taking his toddler son Gabe and leaving his wife and daughter behind. And I think those were the darker parts of it that Stephen King was less thrilled about.
So in the version that I have of the book, there is actually a letter by Stephen King that he wrote years later, and he now puts in the copy of his books. And it basically explains that how I never wanted this book to be published. When people ask me what the scariest thing I've ever created was, it's this. And the reason that he says that is because the reason that he created Pet Sematary was because he had similar experiences. So he and his wife and his kids when they were younger had to move because of his writing career. One day his son almost ran into the road, and he like caught his son by the back of his shirt and pulled him back. But that's what kind of started him to be like, okay, like what if I didn't get him in time? And that's how he created the story of like, hey, Gage like running into the road, getting hit by the truck, that type of thing. And then in their backyard, there was a sign for a pet cemetery, and that's why it's spelled it the way it is, because it was a bunch of kids who wrote it. And then he started to think about like, hey, like what if I lost my son? Like how desperate would I have been? Like what kind of lengths do people go to do these things? So that was another one that was very personal to him. That's why he wanted it to never be published, because he thought it was too dark. But I think his wife made him.
I could never read that book because
he owed them a certain amount of output. I don't know what Tabitha had to do with it, but she probably had something. Did you say she did?
There is a book, I can't remember if it was that or something else, that he literally threw away, and she found it and read it and was like, you're not throwing this away. This is a masterpiece. And I think it might have been Pet Cemetery.
Might have been.
Yeah, I haven't rewatched the original since having my daughter because I can't do child death anymore.
That would be that's a
just hearing about like how he wrote that. I am so full of anxiety with my daughter all the time. I think of all of the ways that she could die all of the time. Those are my intrusive thoughts now since I had her. I used to always have intrusive thoughts, but they were typically like, what would happen if I cut my finger off cutting this carrot? Or if someone tried to rob me while I'm waiting at the gas station. Like those are the types of intrusive thoughts I would have. Now they're like, I wonder if my daughter is still buckled up in the backseat. Like I wonder if where she's at in my house, what she's doing. It's quiet. I'm constantly like, Nordica, what you doing? When she's in my house. I'm paranoid all the time. And so I relate to that letter a lot. The idea that he experienced that and had that thought in his mind, and it probably consumed him for a very long time after that.
Yeah.
One near-death experience with Nordica, and I would never be the same. Never.
No.
And it hit so hard the way he put that in the beginning of the book, because then like you went into reading this book with this in mind, and it just made it so much more terrifying.
I wonder if mine
the
has
anticipation would be horrid.
Mine doesn't. I think I have the same cup. Oh no!
It's okay, we're good.
I have because I read it in early 2000s, so no, I have a different copy than you do.
I did watch the remake since I had my daughter, and that one didn't impact me as much.
Hated
I think it's because the roles are completely swapped for the children. I didn't like it. I did not like.
It was dark, but it wasn't good.
And the ending of the original is dark
liked it
too.
actually. I liked the ending. That was about it. I liked it because it was really effed up for me. Like I remember thinking like that was the scariest part of that movie was them walking up to the baby in the car.
I think that movie was a perfect example.
Run.
Yeah, I think that movie was a perfect example of one where Taylor gave away too much, because I think the twist of the daughter dying instead of Gage could have been like really cool and really shocking, but they gave the whole thing away.
They did.
Oh, totally. That would have been really good for the audience to get something different than they expected. It would have still been surprising for them, but not if you tell her.
And it still probably wouldn't have been a good movie.
Is the letter in your copy, Crystal?
No, it's not in mine. Which is weird because it's like kind of a newer version.
I think about the toddler seems a little less scary in the first one, but I don't know. The whole episode is so disturbing. But as we were talking about before, it was Zelda. It was Zelda that scared me.
Oh, the Achilles cutting scene was what lived with me.
Oh, Fred Gwynn. He's such a delight. You don't want to bury him up there. Like a hand on that rod. That rod. I love Fred Gwynn so much. So sad to see him get hurt ever. It's freaked me out. And I think that it links to my love of body horror, because Zelda is ill, yes, but they also depict her and shoot her totally different than the rest of the movie. And also in the book, it feels very separate as well. These haunting dreams that Rachel's having is that she has I don't know if her rare disease was real. I don't remember what it was, but it basically her spine was like twisting and she just choked to death is how she died. But she had this debilitating disease, and I think that connects to my love and utter fear of body horror, my favorite things.
Man,
and in the remake they just made her like fall down the elevator shaft, which was lame.
Yeah, it was lame. That was like the best scary. It was the more first level of horror, as Stephen King would say. The terror part is for me was Zelda.
So, what are some other Stephen King books that you guys have read that were?
Carrie.
Carrie.
Oh, we didn't even touch on Carrie.
Carrie was my first Stephen King book. I got it from my middle school library. I really don't remember what my first Stephen King movie was. This one was one of the earlier ones for sure, because it was on TV. And Carrie, I was all right. See, it's not that interesting for anybody else, but I was probably a virgin for longer because of Carrie. Because and it's not the scenes you would think. There's a scene where the mean girl, the popular girl, is like, it's not in the. It happens in the movie, but it's like we get her point of view. It's through her point of view, this particular scene where she's having sex with her boyfriend in the car. And she's thinking, like, oh, everyone said this kind of hurt and it kind of sucks. And they're right. It hurts and it kind of sucks at first. I can't imagine anyone really having fun with this. And then when my friends started doing stuff and they were saying the same thing, I'm like, you know what? I can wait. If I meet somebody really cool, maybe. But, like, I can wait. So I was probably a virgin for longer thanks to Stephen King.
Wow. I'm sure he'd love to hear that.
That's never more perfect for like someone who's obsessed with horror.
That's such an awkward letter, because I don't mean anything like strong by that. But I was thinking that because there's been a discourse, I've seen it more on Twitter than anywhere else, of does Stephen King write women well? And there are some odd things he adds in that are like, okay, you don't understand, you don't know what it's like to walk in a woman's body throughout the day, maybe, but I always felt like most of his female characters had their own agency.
I agree. Especially in some of the adaptations, I feel like they're more empowered than a lot of writers tend to write women with, especially their sexuality. They tend to be much more empowered than you see men write women usually, or girls generally. Read into that however you want. I know a lot of people read into that with Stephen King and imply things that I just don't see. Like you alluded to earlier, they get really hung up on that in the It franchise. Like that's not nearly
Move on.
Yeah, it happens, but like it's a lot of it is a bit more implied to a degree, and it's not that long. It's not like that big of a deal in the book.
It's not gratuitous.
It's not. So Carrie is one of those movies that I did just rewatch it for this, which is I watched both of them actually, the remake and
I love both.
The original. I have a love-hate relationship with the remake.
So odd for you. You use the remake. I like it.
You would think the remake came out in a time of horror that I struggled to connect with some films because I felt like some of their choices for the violence that they were depicting or the horror that they were depicting was a little too like on the nose with stuff. Do we have to actually see her face like in the glass slowly, like her face slowly go through the glass and stuff?
Yeah,
you could tell some choices were made with like 3D in mind. Also, like the unfortunate side effect of using things like that is that the graphics don't always hold up. They just don't.
Was it 3D?
Like over time? I think it was. I think that movie came out in 3D.
Why would you make Carrie 3D? That's crazy. I'm not disagreeing with you. I don't know.
That was the time. That was the time.
But did they
that
make
was
it
the
3D?
time
for some of the scenes?
That was like 2013
you could tell,
that came out?
Yeah. Yeah, that's also when they did, I think, the 3D version in the Final Destination franchise, too. That was just the time when they were doing stuff like that. And that was also when Evil Dead, the remake, dropped. You could see that there's like this vibe in horror back then. Some of them, they hit. Like the Evil Dead one, love. But it needs, that is the film. It is the film. The violence, the blood, the gore, the like in your face, like the stretching skin, all of that is the film. Not this one. This film, like at the very end, like a lot of that gore felt very cheap. It felt like PG-13 horror that's not PG-13, if that makes sense. But I will say, you live with the characters a lot more in the remake.
I love Juliana Moore in it.
Oh,
She's
yeah.
incredible.
And then, and the villain, the girl, the mean girl, you're with her way in the remake.
Like Margaret White is like the ultimate villain in that. Like for
me. I agree.
The original?
Yes.
Or the new one?
All of them.
Everything.
All of them.
I think Piper Laurie did a better job. Yeah, but I think Piper Laurie did a way better job than Julianne Moore.
She feels more crazy.
I don't agree with you.
But that's more of a director choice than it is so much an actor choice. The way
I do love the choice of changing her profession. I thought that was really cool. That's why Carrie knows how to sew, because her mom knows how to sew. And like those things made sense to me. Yeah. And then in the original, I think you live with the mom and Carrie the most. Like you're with Carrie and Margaret the most throughout the film, and you get glimpses of these other characters. But like one of my favorite scenes in the original is when they're tuxedo shopping, and everybody's getting ready for prom, and it's very last minute. These guys are just gonna walk into a tuxedo shop the day of prom and like get a tuxedo. I don't know. I love that because it feels very 70s, 80s montagey. This is a horror version of Grease. And I love those aspects. And the new one has more of that, in my opinion. Like you have more with these characters and more of their feelings and perspective up until the end. I felt more sorry for Judy Greer's character dying. I felt more sorry for what's his face, the boyfriend that took her there, that's played by
Tommy Ross.
Ansel Elgort.
Ansel Elgort, yeah.
Elgort, yeah. Tommy, thank you. I felt more sorry for these characters, and I like that he dies and not just is knocked out.
Carrie's
I love
sad
that
about it.
change.
Like Carrie
she's
feels
so
like
it's like her real retribution is happening from that more than anything.
The gripe that I have with the remake is in Carrie's character. And I don't know if, again, it was like an acting choice or a directing choice, but like in the original Sissy Spacek, like that ending scene, all she has to do is like look and like her eyes and like she looks and her eyes and like that's it. Whereas like the original is like a lot of this and like she's trying and it's in her face. And like the thing that I love about the original Carrie is she kills the gym teacher who was nice to her. And that just shows that she is in such a state where there's no mercy. She does not care. In the new remake, she saves her. So like it humanizes her a little bit. Not to say that Carrie's not human, but it's like that's the point that they drove her to, is that she's even killing. She doesn't know who she's killing.
Exactly.
So
no,
it felt like whoever decided that has not felt blinding red rage, which I think like we're just like no thoughts, just rage. Not often, but it happens.
She's also misinterpreting things in that scene in the original. She's seeing them all laughing at her when most of them are not laughing at her. They're all disturbed and upset and wanting to help her. So she literally snaps and sees everything's is a delusion.
Well,
and
that's very
in
normal
the new one,
too. That's very teenage. Like that's how we see it. We think everybody's so involved with us.
She's just hearing her mom.
They like floating out.
I hate that.
And that's why
I was
the
overhead
that
shot
movie until the end.
That's great. Yeah. Like the overhead shot is great with the like everything's on fire and she's like walking down the street. I love that. But the floating part, no.
No, I didn't like
when it got to that part, that's when I was like, this is silly.
Yeah, that's my love-hate relationship.
Carrie was one of the first films that was really the monstrous film kind of film where she's the protagonist into antagonist. And that comes up a lot in a lot of the books I do read. As Carrie keeps coming back up, like that's the first one where really that happens, where she's the character we empathize with, we feel for. She is a normal person that's had more of a little bit of an unfortunate life than the average teenager. And we really want things to go well for her. And then it turns her into the monster in a certain way. Yeah. That's why I think I love Carrie so much. I love The Monstrous Femme. It's one of my favorites.
I love monsters.
Period. I love Monstrous Femme. I love The Monstrous Femme. I love the body horror so much.
I just love a good for her movie. And Carrie is like the epitome of like good for her movie. Like Carrie was the victim. I will stand behind that. Yeah.
100%.
So many people misunderstand. Like we're not saying awesome that it ended that way and that she killed everybody. It's like, no, God, that sucked that happened. At least she got a little bit of retribution in some way. I'm glad she did. Kind of like a
and you know what?
So I guess that comes from a place more so of there was like such a discourse about Midsummer, I say, but Midsommar on TikTok recently.
Did you guys ever read or watch The Thinner?
Yeah. Thinner, I read that book recently.
Thinner, I think.
Yeah. So I've only seen half the movie, but I read that book recently. I've read so much Stephen King. I really thought that he couldn't shock me anymore. But when I got to that ending, that last page, I literally had to like put the book down and just like sit with my thoughts for a minute.
Well, do you mind? I won't tell you what happens at the end, but do you mind if I give you what kind of ending it has? Like good or bad?
Yeah, don't feel anything crazy because now I'm very intrigued by this.
It's dark. Yeah. I'm just going to say that.
It's dark.
Okay.
Dark.
Good.
It's dark in the movie. I haven't read the book in a while, but the ending of the movie I do remember. Dark.
Yeah.
I'll say.
That's one of those dark and the book really does it better. Me. It's one of them. It affects me the way that Tusk affects me. That's one of those movies for me.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's tough. Those
so
are tough
good,
for
right?
me.
So good.
I really
watch it over and over again. Justine.
I almost rewatched that one this time around, and then I kept having flashbacks to watching it, and I'm like, I'm good.
It's a no for me.
I'm good. I don't know if I'm in the headspace for this one, and I don't want to blow it up or
Adaptations.
anything, but it's one of those. It's just one of those styles of horror that are hard for me to get over. They like stick with me. And I'm trying not to give too much away, but I also like films that have careful what you wish for kind of vibes and careful who you treat poorly vibes.
The movie is a little old fashioned with how they talk about the romantic people, but it's not in mean
That's true.
spirit, but like could be a little bit better. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's a little cheesy at points from what the parts that I've seen.
The G word comes up.
Effective effects that I think still work. Enough to like live with me still. Like it's been a while though.
I don't know if you guys were fans of Daria, the cartoon from MTV.
I did watch that.
From MTV, yeah.
Huge Daria fan. I do remember a joke that it's Quinn just innocuously talking to her friend. She's like, I saw that movie Thinner, and I just don't get like how that could be a horror movie. What a dream.
That is such 90s, early 2000s humor.
Yeah.
Also Quinn, okay? But she grows up by the end of Is It College Yet? Okay? Let's not judge Quinn a little bit too harshly.
Out of the books you've read that were adapted to Stephen King films, what is your least favorite adaptation? Tommyknockers? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I
haven't seen that movie. I read that book.
I would love to see that redone. I love aliens. So they scare me so much.
It's like the thing that scares me the most. Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, that book was freaky.
I'm gonna have to read the book because I haven't read that one.
We haven't talked about Dreamcatcher. That's kind of a fun one.
That's one of those ones that a lot of people hate, but I actually really like that movie.
I haven't seen that one.
That's a tough one for them to adapt too, so I think I give it a lot of leeway, but I like it. I think it's bonkers.
Not toilet humor, but I felt like it worked.
It's close. Yeah, a lot of toilet humor. If you like the film Slither and you want a serious version of it,
or if you want to be like more original and you like Night of the Creeps with Tom Atkins.
Oh yeah,
good.
Yeah. A lot of people make fun of Maximum Overdrive, and I'm right there with you guys. It's not a great film, but it's kind of fun.
It's fun.
It's kind of fun, right?
If you go into it expecting
soundtrack.
that, if you like go into it like knowing like, hey, this is gonna be fun, like I can't take this movie seriously, then you're gonna be fine. I feel like the people who hate on it like went in looking for a serious Stephen King horror movie, and like that is not it.
Do you think Christine gave them permission to like basically try that movie?
I actually don't know the story behind Maximum Overdrive, how he came to direct.
Because I wonder. He's like, oh, Christine did work.
Great soundtrack if you like.
Let's try Maximum Overdrive.
He has said before that he doesn't remember it because he was on coke the whole time.
So I talked a little bit about how Dreamcatcher is a little divisive on whether it's a good movie or not. But The Mist is too. People are weird about The Mist.
I like The Mist.
Yeah.
I
love The Mist.
Some people hate that movie. They think it's so bad because of the creatures in it. But I'm like, I don't care about the creatures.
I love
this
it.
movie is good.
The creatures aren't like, it sounds weird, but the creatures aren't like the villains that we're really supposed to be scared of.
The same character in Midnight Mass, that religious
Bev.
Yes. Yeah. That's the most devastating ending in a horror movie ever.
Like, and that's a change
Stephen King
from the
himself.
book.
He says he wishes he thought of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is better than the book.
Yeah, it's better. And it's just a short. The book's like very short. It's like 100-something pages.
It is it is short.
I mean, they get
I feel like the ending in the book is very ambiguous. If I remember, did they get rescued?
It is. It's very open ended. I think they just kind of walk off and like
they just like go into the mid, like walk off.
Yeah. It's not nearly as hard. I think
as hard hitting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't mind the creature design though either. I think they're very otherworldly and fun, and like they're not scary. But they're kind of
like
scary.
an addition to the story. Again, like
it's like, okay, we have to deal with each other in here. Yeah, while these things are also flying around out there.
I think about that film often. Anytime someone talks about other dimensions, I think of The Mist. Anytime people talk about sad endings, I think of The Mist. It's one of those, it's just one of those films. Anytime you talk about a religious fanatic in a film, I think of The Mist.
It's very versatile.
It is. It's one of those films that has a lot going on in it and a lot of fantastic performances again.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I loved every bit of it.
Me too.
Yeah. Another movie adaptation that I really like is Cujo.
Yeah. So
Watch
good.
for me.
Another one I haven't watched again since I
But
had
Dee
my daughter.
Wallace is tour de force in that movie. She makes
I'm
that
friends
movie.
with Dee Wallace.
Yeah. I'm
I
so
know.
jealous of
I want to
you.
throw up. She followed me on TikTok, and I about threw up that day. I
Would have passed away.
I almost
Passed
did. I
away.
was like, I
Sad.
cannot believe she's following me right now.
I did make a TikTok one time saying how I loved her, and then she commented on it and said, "I love you too, baby." And I have it screenshotted, and I'll never get rid of it. And I want to frame it.
Print it, yeah.
Yeah,
She's so nice.
but she's so sweet. But that is one of my like favorite performances in a horror movie ever.
Yeah.
Is her in that movie?
Her in
Absolutely
any
incredible.
So much in
movie.
that movie. Oh my
Yeah.
god.
She's solid. Yeah,
You feel it.
you do. God,
Yeah.
that
So
book is sad.
I was just gonna say, I actually wish that they made the ending the same as the book ending because I
Me
think it would have been
too.
like a lot more devastating.
Me too. I
What's the
agree.
difference? Do we want to know?
Do we want to spoil it? I don't know.
Maybe not.
Yeah,
I
go
mean,
ahead. It's fine.
The kid just
They've
dies.
been out for a while.
The kid dies in the book.
The kid dies.
Yeah,
Straight up.
dehydration, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he dies. Or she like
Yeah.
she thinks that they got out and she thinks that he's alive, and then the husband finds them and is like, "How long has he been
Yeah.
dead?" And
Yeah.
she like
Oh
didn't
my
even know he was dead.
Yeah, it's
Steven.
rough.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Steven.
Steven.
Rude.
That's
It's
really
a lot
disrespectful.
rougher. Yeah.
Oh.
The dog
Whereas like in
and
the
the
movie, it's
boy?
like a happy ending. Yeah,
It's happier. They get away. Woo.
yeah.
But isn't that one of the books he like just doesn't remember writing?
A
So he
few, I
just doesn't
think. Yeah.
remember.
Oh,
I feel like a
Rose
lot of them
Matter
from that
is another
time
one.
frame.
Yeah.
Rose Matter, I
yeah.
think, is another one.
I struggle
That's
with
what I have
dogs
two
dying, too.
versions of that book.
Rose Matter? There's
These
two
are both
versions of
Rose
that
Matter. I know. I just have two because that's one of my favorite books by him.
That's one that we need to see Flanagan do.
one? Oh,
I want to
Flanagan would
see
rock
a
that
movie
one.
adaptation. Oh, I would. He would do so good at that. Oh my
So
god.
good. Yeah.
We
Literally
call
any Stephen King work. Hey, Mike.
Yeah. He, in this whole
Anything.
episode.
He should just-
We
he should
talk
just do
about
the
Mike Flanagan
adaptations.
so much.
We do.
Because
We're
he's-
all
he really-
He's a god. And I'd be
agree.
fine with him even like, redoing things. Like I
Totally.
would never want Misery to be remade, but if somebody was like, Mike Flanagan's redoing Misery, I'd be like,
You're like, well,
Done.
okay.
Sold.
I would
Casting
absolutely.
base
love
is such
to
a
I
do
big
want him
part
to
of
do
that for me,
Silver
though.
Bullet.
yeah.
That's what I want to see him do because he
Yeah.
has
Yeah.
alluded to wanting to do a werewolf movie. And I'm
He
like,
has
yeah.
alluded. Yeah.
People
witch
hate on
Silver
Silver Bullet,
Bullet.
but I love Silver Bullet.
I do
Silver
too.
Bullet's
I do
good.
too.
Silver Bullet,
Yeah.
it's
So
Stand By Me,
fun.
but with a werewolf.
With a
And
werewolf,
less
yeah.
friends. Yeah,
Yeah.
werewolf.
Yeah.
And
That would
Corey
be
Haim.
amazing.
And it has a little bit of the vibe from the Losers Club because his bike is called the Silver Bullet too.
No, the scene with the whole dream sequence with the priest, Big Ed.
That's what I'm
I'll always
talking
know
about.
him. I'll always know him as Big Ed. Big Ed. And it feels so similar to, and I mean in an homage type of way, to Midnight Mass. There's just so many parallels between those two. So this is our
Mhm.
Mike Flanagan and Stephen King episode.
He was
I'm not
supposed to
gonna
do
cry.
the revival remake or the revival adaptation, and that's what I thought Midnight Mass was for a moment. When I saw
Mm.
the trailer for Midnight Mass, I thought, is this a reimagining of revival? Like that has that same religious undertones? And then I wondered, maybe he didn't do revival because he was doing Midnight Mass, and that's why he's not on that project anymore because he was going to do revival, and then he's like, you know what? I'm pulling the trigger on Midnight Mass. This is a project I've been wanting to do. I better do it now. And he was on the thought process of revival and then just pulled out. I don't know, but I want him to
Well,
do
the
it.
whole cat thing makes me
Yeah.
think that the whole thing is a dedication to the masterpiece that is Sleepwalkers.
Sleepwalkers.
I'm just kidding.
They're
just
so
rewatched that movie
similar.
today.
Obviously,
Yeah.
Flanagan is heavily inspired by Stephen King. It's very clear.
Yeah. Heavily.
But yeah, that's why I'm torn. I want to see him do more Stephen King, but I also want to see him do
Do his own thing, yeah.
universe because he's got the chops for it. He's got the fan base now for sure.
I'm excited for the Giallo House of Usher. Like I
Oh
am. Like,
yeah.
Oh my god.
I am
More
God.
Rahul Kohli
So,
too.
red.
Yeah.
I can't
Oh
wait.
my
for that.
god.
I
He's
love
got
that
so,
man.
I
so
don't. When is
many
that?
people
Do
in
we
it.
have a release date for that project?
It's just as next year. Doesn't give us a
Ugh.
release date.
Hopefully
but
early next year
hopefully
for
early, but-
Firestarter. That movie.
Yeah,
was,
there's tons.
Both movies were bad.
See,
Yeah,
I
it
used to
wasn't that
hate
bad.
the
It's
original
just
one, and
slow.
then I saw the new one, and I was like, "Oh, the original one
Original's not
actually
so bad.
isn't
Yeah.
terrible."
The original one's not bad.
The book was
new's so
popular
bad.
though. I have not read the book, but the book was extremely popular when it came out, and
Mhm.
I think this was a fabricated story, but it's Drew Barrymore, so I don't care. I love her. Is that the idea that her mother bought the Firestarter book like at the supermarket when they had like magazines and stuff, because she thought the cover of the book looked just like Drew's face. And so she bought the book for Drew, who's, I don't know, 6, maybe 5.
Yeah,
and
probably.
Drew, I was thinking that she just liked the book, and Drew read the book and wanted to do the movie. I don't know if that's true, but it's Drew Barrymore, and she's awesome, so it doesn't matter. But it's Drew Barrymore.
I love her. I love Drew Barrymore so much.
her.
She's one of my favorite
too.
celebrities ever. So if you guys
You're
want to
like
yell
the
at us,
goth version of Drew Barrymore.
I get that. Yeah, I get that all the time. I'm the spooky Drew Barrymore.
Big
Wow.
compliment.
That is.
I know. It's my favorite thing anybody's ever said to me. I'm like,
I see
it's
it.
my whole
yeah.
identity now. That's it. I am her. Yes. If you guys want to yell at us in the comments because we didn't cover your favorite Stephen King
Dead Zone.
adaptation,
Oh my god.
you're welcome to do so.
Dead Zone.
Oh, the Dead Zone.
Boom, boom,
Come
boom.
on.
Cronenberg. Oh my god.
So you don't get to yell at us for this one.
I haven't read the book. I haven't read the book, but
either.
I love that movie. It's such a weird movie for Cronenberg. It's executed so well. It's Christopher Walken's best performance, and I love him, but he's usually a more comedic role. But that's such a good movie, and I haven't read the book. I can't really
series that I love from Stephen King that are like that I don't think a lot of people appreciate enough. But like someone mentioned in the comments, Langoliers. Loved the Langoliers.
I
thought
I've
the
never
like
watched it.
paper
I didn't see
ripping
that.
dude, he was just like, oh, he was so fun. I love him. And then Desperation is another one that I love.
Oh, that's one of my all-time favorite. Oh, I forgot about that
God,
one.
there's so many.
There
I
are.
have
Like, I
to
forget about all these.
This is one of my
Yeah.
favorite movies.
What's
Me too.
Desperation about?
The Town of Desperation.
Is it like The Stand?
Stuck
whole
in that
one.
town. It's kind of
There's a cop.
yeah, it's kind of like purgatory, isn't it? To a degree, they're trapped in the town. They can't leave.
I saw
and...
Fahrenheit like 411 or something like that. A movie where they're in purgatory and it was weird. And I didn't like the movie that much. Is it like a better version of that?
It actually gives me.
I mean,
the
it's-
show
I'm not talking
Scrum
about
gives me the-
Fahrenheit 451, by the way. I'm talking about some other lesser thing that is not related to the
Lesser
book.
thing. I would say just watch Desperation and just see. It's good.
I'll watch it.
I don't think it's a movie for everybody.
Yeah.
But
It's
I
made
really
for
liked it.
TV, right? Like
It's made it's like kind of not a great movie, but I don't know. I grew up with it, so I just love it.
me too. Me
Close to
too.
my heart.
Yeah.
I did mention
Um,
Sleepwalkers earlier. Someone just mentioned it in the chat. I haven't read Sleepwalkers. I've just seen the movie. I just rewatched it. Clotis is amazing. Amazing cat. One of my favorite cats in a movie. Alice Craig I love her. She plays the mom that's having sex with her son. But
She is one of another favorite of mine in the horror
she
community.
is the Borg queen. I'm a big Trekkie. If just Sydney, I'm a huge Trekkie. She is the G from First Contact Borg queen. She forever owns a part of my soul. I love her.
Wow.
She's also very creepy. She does creepy
She
so
does
well.
that well.
My favorite Stephen King novel is The Stand, and I'm tired of seeing miniseries on it. I want to see a full blown.
I've never read it.
I haven't seen the series either,
my
but
favorite
that book is incredible.
Yeah,
Incredible.
it's one of the few books that I've read more than once. Like I'm not typically good at picking up a book a second time,
Yeah.
but The Stand is one that I put on in like audio form when I paddleboard. I like listen to it all the time. I reread it. Like it's just one of those
And
comfort books.
It's
which is really
1,100
gross.
pages, but it doesn't feel like it.
No.
Whereas
it's such
like
a good
it is
story.
1,100 pages, and like I had a really tough time getting through the book, but like
Yeah.
The Stand flew through.
Yeah,
It's
and
also
I
more
understand why
fantasy,
they do a
right?
miniseries.
Would you
because it's
consider
got
it like a
lot.
horror fantasy, you guys?
Post-apocalyptic with a
Yeah.
sprinkle of
There's like a
religious
supernatural
horror,
element.
to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it's got like
the Dark
Revelations
Man's in
vibes.
it, right?
It
Yeah.
is, but it's a different iteration of the Dark Man. He is I don't think he's called the Dark Man in the book. He might be in like a moment or two.
I think
has a
they
name,
do
I
reference
remember.
him. Randall Flagg.
Yeah. Randall Flagg is what
Yeah.
that's what he goes by in the book. So I think that's what they call him in the book. And he's referenced the Dark Man is called Randall Flagg in other books.
Yeah.
I think. One of those
Or they
happens
use the
where
same
it's not
initials, too.
so- yeah.
Mm.
He is also loosely considered the Antichrist or the devil in the book, really. It's got a lot of religious ties to
Mhm.
interpretation of who he is. To some people, he is the devil or the Antichrist or the devil trying to make the Antichrist. Like,
It's very
But-
good versus evil.
yes, yeah. In fact, yeah, you get like the what's her face in the
Mother Abigail.
Mother Abigail, who's like the
her.
messenger for good, and he's the messenger of
Glenda's
evil.
a good witch.
And, yeah, she's
like
just
you said
passed
it.
away. She comes to people in visions, and she's trying to congregate people to a mission. Basically, this is post-apocalyptic, as in it's post-virus, like plague wipes out the population. So you get a lot of plague stuff going on.
And next time,
That was my COVID read.
I literally reread it because of COVID. Like COVID hit, and I'm like, I'm gonna read The Stand.
Did you guys rewatch? Have you guys seen or rewatched Contagion since COVID? Shoot.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god. It's even harder to watch.
Did I tell you
it was
the
a
funny
bad
thing about
decision.
Contagion?
Yeah.
Did I ever tell you my funny, very self-deprecating story about Contagion?
No, I don't think so.
So I had only seen the word contagion before the film came out. So the year that the film came out, I did not know that the word and the name of that film was Contagion. I thought it was Contagion.
I love that.
I was like, oh, someone's like, what movie are you watching? And I'm like, oh, I'm watching Contagion. And they're like, never heard of it. And I'm like, yeah, it's about like viral outbreak. And they're like, you mean Contagion? And I'm like, yeah, what did you think I said?
Amazing.
That's incredible.
Have you ever done an interview, Sydney?
Like, how so?
A Zoom, or because I see a lot of people do it, and people that are creators that are like smaller, like our size. Do you have that aspiration, I should say? Do you think?
Yes and no, because obviously I would love to talk to these people, but I also feel like I would make an absolute fool of myself and just black out and pass away. I don't know.
That's my.
See, I am a fool. I feel like I could talk to anybody. I am a fool unless there's one man. It's not the one you think I'm going to say. There's one man I would never want to. If he was in the same room as me. No. Oh. If he was in the same room as me, I would just shut my mouth because it's best he just forgets me. It's John Waters. I would never want to say anything out of John Waters. And I feel like anything I would say is so banal. And so I could never say a word to John Waters. I just think he's so cool that it's just best I just don't say a word because I'd ruin it. Ruin everything. Ruin everything we have as friends and colleagues. Which is nothing. So it can get negative. It can go negative.
Let me do the outro. Yes. We have a Discord, you guys. We can continue the conversation in there. So if you're not a part of our Discord community, you should probably join it. Also, if you'd like to support this podcast, we do have a Patreon. We have a few people that are coming up on their anniversaries and getting some pretty sweet merch. So congratulations to those guys. They will be going across the screen right here. We'll get to see their names.
I don't even have our merch.
I don't even. It looks really cool. That sticker looked massive.
Cool. It did.
Yeah. So if you would like to support the podcast, you're welcome to join our Patreon. You'll get extra accesses in our Discord to the slasher chat where we can ask you guys to vote for stuff sometimes. Sometimes we do movie nights. And you can follow us on TikTok, Instagram. We all have our individual TikToks and Instas too. And then don't forget to go check out Horror Chronicles if you're not already following her, because I feel like everybody is.
I don't feel like, how could you be here?
Oh,
really?
stop.
Please, here we are. I'm going to dish over you again.
I get really uncomfortable when I get complimented.
That's why we're like,
you're really good at what you do. It's just, you have the natural talent.
Thanks, guys. What can I say? It was completely accidental.
That just means you're all
She's
the more
naturally
talented.
super cool. Okay.
That's what can I say? People on the internet like me. I don't know.
So make sure you guys go check her out and keep an eye out for those projects that she mentioned at the beginning. And then go ahead and let us know what your favorite Stephen King adaptation was. Maybe we missed yours, or if we talked about it, what did you agree and disagree with? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time. Bye-bye.